Hello, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Brian Michael.
And I'm Angela Yeager. On this week's show, we have a new drama from director Spike Lee. We have another drama by Debra Granik, who was last, I think, on the show with Winter's Bone. And we have an indie film by a first-time filmmaker. And we have an Oscar-nominated film, as well as one of his distinguished classics. We'll start off with our first film, which you saw a clip at the top of the show for, which is Spike Lee's BlacKkKlansman. It's about an African-American detective in the 1970s who infiltrates the local Ku Klux Klan with the help from his partner. The character's name is Ron Stallworth, and he is based on the real Ron Stallworth, who was a detective in Colorado Springs. His partner is played by Adam Driver. John David Washington is the star of the film, and it's his first lead role. This film has been getting a lot of buzz going into it. It was up for the Palme d'Or at Cannes Film Festival, which is the first time Spike Lee's been at Cannes Film Festival in a long time. Very long time. And it won the Grand Jury Prize at Cannes, which is a huge honor. It's a fantastic movie. It's visually striking, as all Spike Lee movies are. It has great performances, and I think some of his use of some different types of breaking the fourth, I don't know what you would call it, but breaking the wall. You know, he often brings you out of the film on purpose, and in this case it really worked for me. There is a really powerful scene with Harry Belafonte while he's telling a story to the group at the Black Student Union, and it juxtaposes him telling this horrific story from a real-life incident that happened the year after the movie Birth of a Nation came out, and he juxtaposes that with a group of Klan members in modern day, well, in this case in the 1970s, watching the movie and cheering it on. And the scene is horrific and really hard to watch, and also extremely powerful.
Yeah, you know, that's the best scene in the movie to me, and I'm actually familiar with John David Washington. If you watched Ballers, you don't watch Ballers, the Dwayne Johnson's TV show on The Rock? See, you know, you gotta watch TV, Angela. So he's actually a very good actor, and so I was really excited to see him in this film. And of course, I was a big Spike Lee fan. It's always been kind of hot and cold as of late, and with a lot of his films, I have been impressed. Unfortunately, this is one of the ones I would put in that category. I like this movie, but to me, that there was no sense of urgency with this film. It was very, very laid back, especially with the music. At one point in time, there is a race to stop something really bad from a bomb going off. So it's a summer movie. And the music was just like this slow guitar while people were racing around, and it just didn't. I never leaned forward in my seat with this movie.
It's not an action movie.
But it could have had. But there was so much that could have been done in this film. You know, when you look at his earlier films, they were so smart, they were so witty, there was such great dialogue, and it just didn't. This film just was kind of like, oh, matter of fact, this is what's going on here. This is what's happening, and I like it. I mean, it's still a pretty bold film, but I've seen him do so much better, and it was just a little disappointing when I could sit there and times going, why isn't this happening? Why isn't something more happening? Why aren't we moving on a little quicker? Why is it such a slow pace? And it's just that he is just telling a story as opposed to being a filmmaker and having an experience. When you look at like Do the Right Thing or Malcolm X, those are experiences. Even Get on the Bus was something I thought that was that.
Because I feel like this film was an experience. I mean, it hit me pretty hard. I mean, it's not just the story. I mean, he's telling a very powerful, starting with the opening scene with Alec Baldwin. He's telling.
Which really wasn't needed.
He's telling the story of he's really telling the story of racism in America in a really powerful way, and so it's not just about this man's story. This story happens to be true, so it makes it kind of incredible, but it goes way beyond that. He's drawing conclusions going back to you know, pre-Civil War period to now, and showing that there is a through line and a continuum. And I feel like you have to take the time with that. He didn't want to turn it. It's not Inside Man. It's not an action movie. He's not trying to move you along quickly. He's trying to let you absorb what he's saying.
You know, when I saw like Battleship Potemkin and I saw it in a large audience, that I was ready to rip up the seats and I was ready to throw them at the screen because of the way that the Russians were being treated back in the early 1900s. This black and white film that really made me feel something. Do the Right Thing I watch every year, and that still makes me feel something because I watch that film and it gets very frustrating because it still applies today. We really have gone nowhere. And this film
You just didn't feel
did not
enough?
have that. It didn't. It was just kind of a matter of fact. Here's the story, and it could have been made by just about anyone. There's aside from the Harry Belafonte scene, and there's a speech where we get to see faces kind of going across the screen. Other than that, I would have never known this was a Spike Lee movie.
Really, you couldn't tell. What about the scene at the end?
Yeah, I mean that was. To me, that was not really all that powerful. To me, it was kind of lazy in a way. I was like, gosh, you know, that's kind of that was a softball. It wasn't needed. You should have already, that should have been an affirmation. That should have been, yes, exactly. But by that time I was just like, oh yeah, I know, this is terrible. But nothing up there led up to it to where it was just, that should have been the thing that really made you angry.
Well, I can recommend it.
I liked it. I can recommend it. Yeah, 3 stars. But I was
that's
just,
it for you. Okay.
It should have been more, Angela. It really should have been more.
No,
When
I
you
mean,
look back
I
over it,
feel like
just,
it's not do the right thing. Well, I mean, it's hard to compare a director to one of the greatest films of all
well,
time.
no, but you're also like Kid on the Bus. There's a lot of other films that even school
no,
days
he's
really
done a
made
lot of
me
great
feel
films.
something.
Yeah, he's done a
This
lot
one
of great
didn't.
films. But I like Chirac and some of his other newer ones, Red Hook Summer, better than you did. So, okay, so we'll move on to our next film, which is 8th Grade. Take a look at the clip. Okay, you saw a clip for 8th Grade, and this is the new indie film by first-time filmmaker Burnham. And this is about a shy teenage girl going through her last week of, indeed, the 8th grade, like the name. And Kayla is the name of the character, played by Elsie Fisher. And wow, what a performance. This movie it's interesting because there's been a lot of great coming-of-age stories in recent years. Just this year alone, there was one called Summer of 1993, which I really enjoyed, Brian a little bit less so. But there's been some really good coming-of-age stories. But this one really, wow, it really speaks to what it's like to be at that awkward middle school stage. And that maybe doesn't sell it so well because I don't know how much you want to go through that experience again. But there were certain aspects of this film that I can quite honestly say I've never seen captured quite this way in cinema before. And I've seen a lot of coming of age stories about, you know, everything from a really, you know, a movie like Ghost World where it's a character who's an outcast and more on the fringes, to one like Edge of 17 where, you know, she's a little bit more normal but she's got her problems or whatever. But this one really captures that awkwardness and just that horrifying feeling of not fitting in a way that I hadn't seen before.
Those films that you mentioned are done with actresses that, first of all, very Hollywood, and they're very untraditionally very pretty, obviously. I mean, they're you know, movie star looks, and they're also actresses who are very confident and had worked before and had done this, and this is
experienced actresses.
Yeah, experienced actresses. This young girl is not, or does an amazing performance of one who is not. And what I really liked about what the director did was there's so many close-ups on her face, and she has acne, as we all did, or as we all do. And it's not a crime, and it's what people actually look like. There's no Photoshop. They show how she'll Photoshop using her Instagram and other things like that. But we actually get really close up in this young girl's face, and you really, truly, honestly care about her, as you should with a protagonist in a film. And the situations that she's put in, we've all been there before. We've all had to go to a pool party and wear a bathing suit, and whether or not you're confident or how confident you are with your body, you think everyone else's looks spectacular and you don't. There were so many of those scenes where Kara and I we kept leaning into one another going, oh no, please don't do this. Oh, just do this, don't do that, don't do that. You know, because it really brought you those years back.
Oh, yeah.
Now, when you say, I don't know if that's appealing to people to watch, it's such a great film, and you really root for this young lady, and I really like it. And there's a lot of them that, like Age of 17 or something. Was it Age of 17? Is that the one I liked so much with what's right?
You liked it more than
I liked it, yeah. I really enjoyed that
Hollywood,
one. But that's more of a mainstream film. This film just is so earnest and so honest, and you really like her, as well as Josh Hamilton, who plays her father.
He's so good.
Who is so incredibly good. He's a single dad. We don't get into why he's a single dad and he's raised her on his own, but you can feel him just wanting to put his arms around his girl every moment he can, but he can't, and there's times where she snaps at him, Dad, stop it, you're being weird. Well, don't look at me. And no matter what he does, I've dealt with this before with my niece.
Don't look at me, but don't look at me and be weird, or you know, stop being weird while you're not looking at me. And he's just like, you know.
It really does an amazing job. This is finally an indie picture that's gotten a high Rotten Tomato rating, or gotten all this buzz, that we've watched and went, oh, it was good. It was 3 stars. It was 3.5. This is a 4-star film, and it is really something special.
Yeah, I agree that it's a 4-star film. There was just so many moments. I mean, I was an 8th grade girl at one time where I really identified with it. And one of the things I really liked that they didn't do is she's just, I don't want to say she's an average girl, but she's not, you know, again, like the character in Ghost World where she was really alternative and she was really cool and she had a different look.
She had a 30-year-old writing her lines for her. She was really cool.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? There was something unique about her. Yes. Or it's a girl who's bullied. And, you know, the character here, she's not popular. She doesn't have very many friends or any friends, but she's also not really bullied or anything. She's just so shy, it's like she could just disappear. She just goes through life kind of hunched over, sitting in her class, hoping no one notices her, but then also hoping they do notice her.
Yeah, exactly. Then
but for the right things.
YouTube videos where she talks about being confident and doing this, and other, you know, all the while she's not. And I loved that because it was easy to talk a game and I can do this and look at me. But then when the camera's off, just to go, oh, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, she's a very likable character.
Yes.
She just seemed very real. She just seemed like a girl that age. You know, she's actually a very pretty girl, but she's not movie star pretty. She's pretty, but she has, you know, lumps still in certain places. And
that bathing suit was awful.
Well, the bathing suit was not a flattering bathing suit.
I was like, oh no.
You know, she has the acne, but there's no reason. You know, they didn't like uglyify her. You know, they didn't take like a gorgeous girl and like make her just put huge glasses on her and pretend that was it.
Yes.
Yeah, something stupid like. The other thing it does is it really examines, you know, the social media and the amount she's on her phone and how much of an impact on her in a non-preachy way. It's not like the director's trying to point out like, this is bad, she's on Instagram all the time or whatever. But it does show, you know, she's sitting there looking at this constant barrage of images of young women, some of them her own age, who are photoshopped and have all these filters on, and comparing herself to that, and it certainly doesn't help her self-esteem. So yeah, there's just so much to recommend about it. And it has a great, and the music's really good. I actually very much enjoyed the soundtrack. It was different. It wasn't the classical type score. He used some electronic stuff. He used some, you don't remember the score?
No, I was so pulled into the movie. I honestly didn't even notice
it got really, really loud, like when something was happening, like when she's walking, almost like horror.
Every time he came in,
yeah, that was funny.
Hilarious.
It used music in a very funny way in times too, for her crush. So.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful film.
Great.
It really, really
we can both recommend.
There we go. All right, so our next movie is Leave No Trace, and this is actually directed by the same Debra. I want to say Granik, who directed Winter's Bone, and actually another film that I hadn't actually seen and actually hear much about. So, but I did love Winter's Bone, so I was looking forward to this film. It stars Ben Foster, wonderful actor who plays a father who has a daughter, and they're kind of living off grid or chosen homeless, and they're found in a park here in Oregon. Actually, the movie takes place in Oregon. It's very exciting, in the Northwest. And so once they're found, they are then kind of forced into society, and they have to kind of learn to acclimate. And the young daughter then finds that she actually likes the things that society brings and wants dad to understand that she wants to kind of to do this. He has PTSD. He has a lot of issues that he's had from being in the service and is unable to be around people. And we really get to see both of these characters, and a lot of it through action. There's not a lot of dialogue. There's some dialogue in this film, but it's wonderfully shot. It looks absolutely amazing, and you really wonder about and care about these characters, so we're able to follow through. Because normally I'm like, no, get in a house. What would you want? Why would you live in a tent? Who wants to live in a tent? I don't want to camp. I hate camping.
It's Forest Park, though. It's
but you really are pulled into this. The film does a great job of not just spelling everything out. At first, they're just we don't know what's going on. We're just kind of following their lives until things happen.
They don't explain it to you. They don't stop and like, this is what's going on with our lives.
Absolutely wonderful. Now, if I'll be Angela for just a moment. This is what I think. No, is that they do a wonderful job where he goes to the VA, gets his medication, and then sells it. And I really thought that was very interesting, because I know that that's a lot of things that what people do for money, and also because our veterans
answered the question that I had at the beginning of the film, which is because he says, "Oh, we're going to go in and get groceries." I thought, how is he getting money? And then they solve that without making a big. Again, she's she is such an exciting filmmaker. I wish someone would give her a budget to make a movie more than once every 7 years, because before she made Winter's Bone, she made a movie called Down to the Bone with Vera Farmiga, which is about a woman struggling with alcoholism, also set in a rural area, also set in working class. So she's got this theme going on. Very fantastic movie, really harrowing. Actually, I'd say this movie is the lightest of the 3 films. I would say Leave No Trace as compared to those 2. I loved this movie. I'm giving it 4 stars. The female lead, whose name I did not write down, and I apologize for not doing that.
I did.
You did write her down.
Yes, Thomasin McKenzie.
Talk about another great performance by a young female actor, just like in our last one. She is just very much authentically this character. There is no moment where I didn't believe she wasn't out there in the forest, starting the wood, starting the fires, just like her dad, doing everything along with him.
We also get a lot of close-ups here, and gosh, I can't say enough about maybe because I'm publicly educated, but I always feel that when you have a close-up, that's easier to read somebody's face and to really get to know that character, and you really care about that character. It's hard not to. And when you talk about something like BlacKkKlansman, I really don't remember. There was only one scene where they had some close-ups on some people, and for the most part, and seeing a reaction to where you could kind of feel what they were feeling. And these other 2 films, they really have that, especially with Leave No Trace, when they're not leading us. I don't know what's going to happen, which is something we rarely, able to do, be able to predict the ending of the movie. It was like, it's going to be either really bad and sad, or it's going to be really happy and unrealistic. And I just love that. And at one point in time, she's waiting for her father. We don't know what's going on, and we just have we bump into other people that then we also find this other community that's kind of living the same way. Fascinating.
Yeah, but they're a community also, and I like that aspect. Like she's still a rural girl. I love the scenes with her in the 4-H. She gets involved in the Oregon 4-H. So for kids out there, it's really nice. She just, she doesn't mind living rural, and they show that the child support services and the social services are actually trying really hard to find them a good placement. They're not going to just stick them in downtown Portland. They're like, okay, we understand you're used to living in the woods. We'll put you out in a more rural community. We've set you up with something. But he's very scarred person, and that's very difficult. It's very hard.
Absolutely.
And I guess this is based on a true story. This really happened, and of sorts. I guess it's sort of, imagination, on what actually happened to them. But very great film. So I'm giving, what are you giving it?
3.5.
3.5.
I really enjoyed it.
Okay. For me, it's 4 stars.
Good. Wow. Angela's just...
4 stars.
Christmas, everybody. Wow. Write that down. 4 stars, 2 in a row here. So our next movie is His Distinguished Classics. That's a list of movies that I've put together. Ones I needed to see and figure out how to shoehorn them into the show. And this week's is The Hunchback of Notre Dame from 1939, considered one of the greatest years in film, at least from the motion pictures of the studios. And this tells the story, of course, of Quasimodo, who's the bell ringer in the Notre Dame, and also goes to the rescue of a gypsy woman, Esmeralda. Is that right? Esmeralda?
Yeah.
What's the name of the goat? I don't remember.
I don't remember the name of the goat.
So. Anyway, so this is one I've been hearing an awful lot about. It's got Charles Laughton, who does an amazing performance as Quasimodo. I was absolutely just amazed. He has a prosthetic eye that's actually lower, and I'm like, well, how did they get this thing to blink? And how are they getting it to, how did they turn his head? Good. It doesn't. But because this eye is so expressive, and you keep tracking, you watch this eye, you feel that this one is should be mirroring it.
Yeah, it's great.
It's an awesome performance. It was really, I just kept staring at him every time he came onto the screen. This is a big budget film for RKO, and you can see it. This is, pre-CGI.
They put all the money up on the screen.
Tons of people. There's a big crowd. It's
like
really
people.
People. An amazing set. And there were so many times that at first I thought, gosh, is that a matte? How is this a special effect? This is absolutely just amazing to look at. Now, they deal with a lot of politics at the very beginning, and sadly, it doesn't follow through, and I wish they would have had more comments as the things went along. But we do follow the story, and the story is very compelling. I would compare this kind of like to The Adventures of Robin Hood. It seems like a Michael Curtiz film. It's a studio picture. It's kind of down the studio line, down the production line, but it's really well done. Everyone's at the top of the game here. I actually really enjoyed this film.
Yeah, William Dieterle, who directed this, it's interesting because I would not have known, he was a studio director, but he came from Germany, and this is the film where you can really see that German expressionism. This
black
is
and
a
white,
very dark movie.
Film, yes.
For 39, especially when you think of what other movies came out that year, Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind. Very colorful films. This movie is very dark.
That's
not like
really
you can't
brave
see it,
look.
but beautiful, contrasting black and white. But strangely enough, then I looked to see what else he did, and he did Faust, but he also did Life of Emile Zola, which we reviewed and didn't care for, but also I don't remember having a very interesting look about it. So that's very interesting. Maureen O'Hara, in her first American film role, who goes on to, of course, be a huge film star, plays Esmeralda, the gypsy.
Pretty easy on the eyes.
Yeah, it's an Irish woman playing a gypsy, but it was 1939, and it's all in black and white. So but Charles Laughton, you're right. He was sort of method before method was cool. Before Brando and before Joaquin Phoenix and before all these guys were going crazy and not getting out of character. I mean, this guy. Apparently, he stayed in the Quasimodo character at all, whenever, at all times, and it pays off. This is the performance for the ages.
Yeah, and I can't say enough about the look of it being that is a really.
You and I quite a few times. We try not to talk, but a few times we were watching. They're like, "Is that a set?" That's I guess the Notre Dame, the replica that they built of Notre Dame is so phenomenal. That alone, I thought they have to have used that in other films because it's when they show the inside of the church and they show the steeple and the bells. I was just like, "How is that a set?"
Has just enough action going on. It's a classic story.
I just kept thinking of all the ways Tim Burton could have screwed this up.
Yeah, well, no.
Had a flat, anyway.
So
don't get me started
in front of a green screen.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. But no, I think it's a great film, a classic. I can definitely recommend it.
So. Ooh, let's do another one, Angela. Let's do another classic film. From the same year, 1939. What else did 1939 bring, Angela?
So also in 1939, a year known for great films, was this one that actually was nominated for an Oscar and was a bigger grosser than Hunchback of Notre Dame, which just once again does not renew my faith in humanity. It is Babes in Arms by Busby, Berkeley, a director who has many movies that I've loved.
Yes.
And starring Judy Garland, an actress who has many movies I have loved, and Mickey Rooney. Well, you can't have it all. So, and it's about the children who are all like, 18, 19, 20, of a group of vaudeville performers decide to put on a performance to try and save their family so that they don't have to go into an orphanage. So a couple things about this. Number one, it's Busby Berkeley. So going in, I was super excited,
His
hoping.
first film.
Yeah. Oh, is that right? It was
It's
his first
film where he directed by himself,
Right.
not just a section of it.
But
So that's
still,
why
you think about something like Gold Diggers of
yeah.
1933, and it has
Sure,
all
sure.
that great choreography. So I was waiting for any choreography.
There you
There's no great choreography
Right.
in this film at all. There's musical numbers that are mostly forgettable, other than a few that I'd already heard before in better movies, like Singing in the Rain.
Yep.
And then I have to bring it up.
Well, no, let's talk about Judy Garland.
There's
Wonderful
Judy Garland.
actress. Same year she did Wizard of Oz.
Same year she did Wizard of Oz, and she put all her energy into that movie.
Alan Freed produced it. It was his first production that he got to do, and he became a big-time musical producer.
And this was the first film that Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland did
Worked together. It's also the first let's put on a show movie. So, I mean, there's reasons why this is like ground zero for a bunch of stuff before we get to what we're going to talk about. So this is why this movie was on the list, because I thought, oh, this is all these different things.
Well, we
This
didn't
is
know
considered
either.
a
I did
classic.
not know this about this movie.
Well, I know, but the second things turned, you went, Brian, what did you get us into? And I thought, oh.
Yeah, I think this was you.
We're going to have this conversation with our audience again. Oh.
So you want to break it to the audience?
No, you go right ahead.
So the big musical number that Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney do to save their town, to show how, and granted, they decide to put on a quote-unquote modern performance to show them what the youth can do, is all done in blackface. And it's not just done in blackface, it's done with the music by Stephen Foster, so it's Americana music, and it's done with children, very small children, throngs of young children in blackface doing mammy-type impersonation. It's horrifying. I'm just going to say it's horrifying. And it's not just horror, and I know it was 1939, but even by 1939 standards, this is horrifying.
Well, even by then, I would hope that the people that put lists together that I respect and watch would have some sort of asterisk or something that'll be like,
yeah, and I was
watch
surprised
this one
because
last,
the blackface in
Don't
this
get
movie
excited
is
about finding
not,
this one.
unlike in other movies where it's really been called out,
Yeah.
we had to kind of really search around on the internet to try to find
Yeah.
mentions of that.
Because we had no idea.
Right.
Judy Garland comes out and talks about how her father was this big minstrel singer, and you went, minstrel? And I was like, hey, what's minstrel mean? Is that soup? What's the? And then boom, the camera pulls back,
And
the
it's a
curtains
huge
open,
sequence.
and there's all these
dozens
people,
and dozens of children.
and
it goes on and on.
and it's tone deaf, and it's bad,
and it's not even good music. I mean, I'm not to say that would justify it. It's also not just a small part of the movie. There's the Holiday Inn with Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire, which also has a blackface scene, which is later than this movie, so it's even worse than that. Where it's one little scene out of the movie, but this is their big show-stopping number.
Yeah.
This is their big number they're going to do to save the town, and it's also it's not very good. Most of the music I didn't find that compelling in this movie.
No.
I mean, some of the songs were famous, but as a musical, it doesn't really sew together all that
doesn't
well.
work. And Mickey Rooney was nominated for an Academy Award, and it's pretty hammy performance. It's pretty heavy-handed performance.
Oh yeah, he's way over the top.
And he's
chewing the scenery big
doing
time.
a Laurence Olivier. He's going to the back of the theater. It's a movie. You don't
And
need
Judy
to yell.
Garland, of course, sounds
Judy
wonderful,
Garland,
but
she
you
sounds
expect.
wonderful. But I thought she was really timid in this one. They really kind of pushed her in the background, even
Well,
though she's supposed
Mickey
to be
Rooney's
on
out there, hamming it up every
Jumping
chance he
around.
gets.
Good
yeah.
heavens! Oh,
So can't recommend this one, and it's a nice companion piece though with BlacKkKlansman in a way, because we can see why Spike Lee is so angry. The history of cinema is rife with these kinds of racist portrayals, and this wasn't the first probably, and it won't be the last.
So the difference is though, Spike Lee, when he shows the Birth of a Nation, also Gone with the Wind, I saw an interview and he said when he was showing these as kids, or in school, they didn't have a discussion afterwards. That's the big issue there. When you see this, it's one thing when you try to sweep it under the carpet. It's like no, you need to have these conversations. You have to explain about what it is and what it means and why these things happen. That's the difference. Not ignoring it, not pretending it doesn't happen, and then all of a sudden things are happening. They showed at the end of BlacKkKlansman that we didn't think was there. We really didn't. Many people didn't think that these things still existed. So, unfortunately, it is. But we have this conversation, and we need to educate people.
Well, the other thing is, in the context of Babes in Arms, here's what bugged me about it. It's one thing to acknowledge the history of minstrelsism and blackface in vaudeville and in cinema, but this was a movie made in 1939. The story is they're the kids who are bringing the new stuff, and they're trying to surpass their parents
and
compete
forward
with cinema.
Yeah.
Well, and they put on a very old-fashioned minstrel show, which is exactly what they would have done in vaudeville decades earlier. So it didn't even make sense within the context of the story. So in any case, so to wrap up, BlacKkKlansman, we can both recommend Me More Than Brian. 8th Grade is our big find this week. Go out and see it. It's a 4-star film. Leave No Trace, I also think is 4 stars. Brian also enjoyed it. Hunchback of Notre Dame, great classic. And Babes in Arms, woof. I would wait on that one until you have no other movies left to watch. You can subscribe on our YouTube channel by hitting that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. You can listen to us on KMUZ and watch us every week on CCTV here in Salem and in Corvallis and in Silverton. I'd like to thank, as always, our wonderful sponsors and our fantastic crew. Have a great day and great movies.